Hungry Days Collective.
This is Take Two.
Níall Ó Murchú.
Perfect.
Thank you.
You've been
Debbie
working
Shaw.
on that. Debbie Shaw.
Easier. But it's so tough with Irish names. It's just like, oh, perfect. Níall. I got it.
Yeah.
Like,
well,
it's
it's
not
it's
Níall.
extraordinarily confusing. Like
Oh.
most people see it, and it's okay for them to think it's Niall because it is written that way.
Yeah, it's just the father.
But it's just, I think it's a reflection also of the Irish mind. Everything's a little bit complicated.
Yeah.
And nothing is really that straightforward. And I think the name reflects it. But I love the meaning of it. Is it means the lustrous one.
Oh.
Yeah, and the O is grandson or
Of.
and then Murchú is, which I love as well, is the hound or the battler of the sea.
Oh, wow.
You know, so for a person who
That's quite
spends a
nice.
lot of time outside in the sea,
Yeah.
I always I always kind of like that.
Do you believe in destiny?
I don't know what I believe in
Okay.
most of the time,
Because that's like quite like a name.
but it
based on
does
destiny.
it does strike me as something that, you know, we are an island people, and for a lot of people our lives would have been in the sea or around the sea, and even though my parents are both from kind of inner city Dublin area, they were drawn back to the sea, and I've always had to live by the sea. So yeah, I think there is something in it, you know, the saltiness.
For sure. Oh, the sea is lovely. And also, what is it? It's unforgiving. That's what I like to call it.
Yes,
And
yes.
people tend to forget about it and
Yeah.
will jump into it with sea swims and all that
Yeah.
kind of stuff. But sometimes, like, go out to the cliff and you're just like looking at
Yeah.
endless sea. And it's like, this beast
Yeah.
that can wipe me out.
Yeah.
Like, and that's with nature in general, I
Yeah.
think. Eh?
Yeah, and I think that's part of the beauty of it, that we look at it and we get that sense of it being huge and powerful, and no matter what we think, us being kind of small in its presence, and it just maybe gives us a little bit of perspective on things. And again, it's a reminder of the power of nature. Yeah, it's just the sheer power of it. But then we are part of nature. We're not separate from it. So maybe it gives us a little glimpse into our own power sometimes as well.
Yeah. And when did you actually start transitioning into going like from an office job or behind the screens to making nature like a significant part of your life?
Yeah, it's a good question. In my early 20s, so I'm 45 now, so
Okay.
about 20 years ago, when I first started working after college, I was also at the same time exploring all of these things. Different types of meditation and healing and qigong and martial arts and yoga and all these types of things. And they were really, there was like this double life going on. There was like the life in the office and then the life outside of the office. And what happened slowly was that the life outside of the office started to take up more time and more time and more time. And eventually, after 20 years, it was the job. But it was a slow transition from one to the other.
Okay. And now how long do you spend outside in nature? Besides as
Oh,
much as possible.
Yeah.
Like, do you have a figure on that?
No, I just try to find as many chances as possible to be outside. So when it's not raining, so even trying to work outside, you know, taking my laptop and going outside to the beach or outside in the garden, just small things like that. Or if I have calls, say for instance, business calls, I try to avoid video calls and try to have them on the old school kind of phone, so I can go outside, so I can walk outside. So just small things like that, I think, help. We are mammals after all, you know, we are built to be outside. So yeah, as to avoid, to answer as much as possible, but kind of as much as possible.
Yeah, exactly. It's fine. So we're going to start talking about the blissful breath, right? First of all, well done.
Thank you.
I read this back to back.
Oh,
so you can question me on literally anything. Please don't.
Page 57.
Exactly. the one thing I wanted to compliment you on is I never thought I'd be able to like go through a meditation while reading it. This was my first experience of like, oh wow, I'm breathing now while reading. And it was the perfect transition. So now I'm on my day 2 of the the 10-day breathing challenge.
Brilliant.
Because it was a great like segue into it. It was very natural. So well done, first of all.
Thank you.
The next thing I want to jump into is that you started it by saying that you suffered with asthma all your life. And this is you're talking to a fellow asthmatic here, and I have my stories with asthma, and I'm still trying to like figure that part of side of my life out, because this is something since the age of 1 that I've had. First question is, where are you at with your asthma right now?
It's non-existent.
So no inhalers?
No inhalers. There was a few steps along the way to get to that point. I think for me, asthma was a reflection of a few things. It was a reflection of quite a difficult birth. You know, obviously I was there, but with no memory. But what I'm told was that it was nearly 2 days of a birth. And at the end, I was nearly dying from not being able to breathe. Oh. So I believe that kind of trauma and the breath were there for a long time. But also the environment in Ireland is so damp. That's another big factor. And I think as well, diet is another big, so dairy creates a lot of mucus. Plus then learning to breathe properly. All of those things combined, slowly moving through those. Eventually I realized I didn't have my inhaler with me, and I didn't need it. And I forgot where it was, and I hadn't bought one in a year. Oh. It was kind of a realization like that. It was that slow that it wasn't like a thing where I felt it's now officially over. It had been over. I just hadn't noticed. I was free from it. And I think what the breathing does for us is it taps into all of those different things that I mentioned. Firstly, without really thinking of it, when we take time just to breathe calmly, our body moves from maybe being a bit too acidic, a bit out of balance, to being more alkaline, a bit more in balance. And in this transition from being out of balance to being more balanced, it starts to release what's called, very kind of poetically, the issues in the tissues. So whatever kind of trauma or difficulty we might be holding on to in the body, as we just breathe, it starts to work its way out. So I think that was a factor in it. I think the learning how to breathe properly then got me into the cold. The cold used to trigger it a lot when I was younger. And learning how to breathe in the cold, because anybody who's had asthma or anything like that knows that horrible panicked feeling when your breathing airways are constricted, and you're really, like, in your mind you're thinking, oh my God, what's going to happen? So learning how to deal with the cold teaches you how to deal with the panic and that kind of feeling. So again, it works through all of that. So I just want to go back to the first thing you said, though, which is very important. The book is written in a way that you don't actually really have to do the exercises. You just read and breathe. And that was the whole point. So I'm glad you felt that, because I've had so many experiences where I've had great books in the past and there's an exercise to doing them. And I mightn't do the exercise fully, and then I go back to the book and I feel I can't progress, or I'm falling behind with the exercises. So the whole idea of the Blissful Breath was that people could just read and breathe, and it was within the story. Yeah.
Everyone knows the benefits of breathing. Everyone knows the benefits of meditation. Yeah. Everyone knows the benefits of drinking water. We all know it, right? How many people are talking about it? But sometimes there is always that little thing which taps into mindset, right? Yep. And motivation. But sometimes people are like, oh, no, I don't want to listen to this app right now.
Yeah.
The fact that now I can just go anxiety page this and literally read, I think it's probably 250 words max. Yeah. Max. And then if I want, I can carry on with it, is unreal. Yeah. Like even the other day, I just threw the book at someone else, just oh, I have anxiety. Well, there you go. Yeah. Page this.
And I'm delighted that you said that, because that's really how we approached the book. That the book wasn't going to be this thing that was an ordeal. The book was easy to read, but also in as you said, you could just jump in and out as you see fit. It's like it's like this beautiful path that runs along, and we can jump onto the path and we can jump off the path, you know, and we can come on different parts of it, and we can go backwards and forwards, and that's really important, I think. For me, what's important in everything that I try to help people with or teach people with is this idea, you know, that it has to be tested in the battleground of life. So it has to work really effectively, and it has to be simple.
Yeah.
But it has to work quickly, you know, because when we're feeling anxious or we're feeling, you know, our mood is not as it usually is, or our energy is low, we want something quickly that works quickly. And just going back to what you were saying about, even though we know a little bit of breathing or meditation or yoga is good for us, there is this resistance, I think, built into us, especially for breathing.
Yeah.
Because even people listening now to this or watching it, we're all breathing. So our bodies are doing it all the time. So I think there's a little part of it that's saying, I'm doing this already. You know, don't do that. Watch Netflix. You know, because your breathing is looking after itself. But so I think that's a natural resistance we have to those things. And once we recognize that there's a natural resistance to it, then we don't beat ourselves up about it as much. We can say, oh, I feel this resistance. Oh yeah, that's because of this. And then it's easier to get through the resistance and go and do the thing. Sometimes we pile a lot of judgment on top of the resistance, and then
we do.
It's hard then
we
to do
sit
it.
In it as well.
It's kind of hard to do it then.
Exactly. We're going to go back to basics now. I don't know if this is like your field of expertise, but is there something scientifically happening the moment that we tap in from breathing to survive versus breathing for a breathing exercise? Like, is there oxygen like in the blood? Like,
yeah, there's so many things happening. So pressure, the body reacts to pressure in the same way. So the pressure can be an attack, physical violence, for example, or heat or cold, or the pressure can be an internal pressure, an emotion. It can be grief. It can be a deadline, you know, so stress, anxiety, all these things are a pressure, and our body reacts in the same way to all of them. Heart rate goes up, body moves up into fight or flight, into the sympathetic part of the nervous system. And this is an amazing thing that we do. And it gives us this burst of energy to go and survive whatever is going on, to run or to hide or to fight. So that's what happens to us when we're feeling anxious or in an emergency state. And our breathing reflects that. So when we're like that, our breathing is up into the chest. It's quick, it's shallow. And everything is in total survival mode. Even our immune system, to simplify it, kind of turns itself off. And our digestion kind of turned itself off. The idea being, let's put all our energy into surviving. Now, it doesn't have to be something attacking us to feel that. It could be just on our phone and we see something that upsets us or even challenges us, or even the movement of the flicking on the phone stimulates this, you know? So for a lot of people, they're constantly up in this emergency mode. So when we decide, okay, I'm going to take a moment to breathe, our breathing and how we feel are nearly the same thing. So if our breathing is erratic because we're on the phone and these things are happening and we're looking at stuff that's upsetting us, or we're just not even aware, we're just flicking, we can decide to change how we breathe. Okay. And by changing how we breathe in a calmer way, the entire body shifts down into this parasympathetic part, the peaceful part of the nervous system. And there we can feel safe. There we can recover. There we can heal and restore ourselves. And that's we have total control over that all the time. And that's through the breath. So the most effective way to get us from this state of agitation down to this state where we feel safe and peaceful again is through the breath.
Okay.
So it's all happening in the body through the breath.
I see. And you mentioned acidic breath and alkaline. What do you mean by that?
So the pH balance in the body is a good indicator of our health and how things are, if things are balanced in the body and in our blood. So oftentimes if we're stressed or we haven't slept well or we're not eating well, it can be a little bit too acidic. And that kind of level of acidity can eventually lead to inflammation, which can eventually lead to being sick or unhealthy or not feeling great. So when we start to breathe calmly, we start to breathe in a way that moves the body down into this parasympathetic part of the nervous system. The pH balance in the body can move a little bit to being more alkaline, so being more in balance. So the 50 or 60 trillion cells in our body, they start to work together a little more harmoniously. So that is a massive shift. It's like it's not a massive move in terms of the blood changing, but it's enough for us to feel it. So it's the difference between feeling like tense and stressed and feeling open and calm.
Okay. And that's in the, like, biologically, we're talking about obviously in blood, water droplets that you're breathing out and that sort of stuff. Like, that is measured. Yeah.
So it's the people, but you know, people's focus for breathing is often on the oxygen, not in the CO2 levels.
Oh, okay.
But it's actually the CO2 levels.
So what you're breathing out.
Yes, where all the magic kind of happens, you know. So when we start to focus on these long exhales, CO2 levels go down and the body starts to, you know, everything starts to change then. Obviously the oxygen is important, but we nearly have enough oxygen in us all the time because we're breathing a lot. When people are in high stress situations, like if they jump in the cold, they go, so they breathe in, but the exhale is so by training ourselves to breathe out, we can really take control of how we're feeling. We'll always breathe in. You know, our instinct is to breathe in.
No, it's true.
It's the exhale where we can find the exhale moves us down into a place where we're calm again.
For sure.
And we can train that. And then and that's to do with the CO2 levels going down, down.
I actually remember, you just made me remember this thing. My last asthma attack, right, would have been when I was playing a competitive match and there was a fast break happening.
Right.
And all I did was one breath in, run.
Yeah.
And then something happened and still holding my breath, forgetting to literally breathe out and breathe back in. I ran back to the other side. This is, if we're going to look at it over maybe a time span, we're looking at like maybe 50 seconds of just intense something like fight or flight happening.
Yes, absolutely.
And then it was like a
and when we're in, you're right, when we're in that we hold our breath.
Yeah.
And often, at least you're aware of it. I've had people coming to me, and a journalist in particular, and she was saying that on a deadline, when she's really working towards a deadline, she might be typing away on her computer and she'll have forgotten to breathe, and like she's like because she doesn't know how long she's been holding, because she's like this, you know, and there's a function for that as well. It kind of gives us total focus on what we're doing, but we don't want that to be becoming a habit. We don't want that for it to be the way we breathe all the time, you know.
Yeah, it's intense. And it kind of then obviously has an effect on, it has a ripple effect on your quality of life and your health, I'm guessing as well.
Everything. Our breathing affects everything. You know, the level of oxygen and CO2 and how it affects the blood and how it affects the circulation, you know, our hormone, it affects everything. And there's a very simple kind of way of looking at that, which is if we look at how much time we spend obsessing about food, you know, and if we stopped eating, we'd last a few weeks. And if we think about how obsessed we are about what we drink, again, if you stop drinking, you get a few days out of it. But if all of a sudden, if you and I just stop breathing now, it would be over.
We're out,
Over. So in terms of how important breathing is to our health, you know, that tells us everything, you know. And we obsess about the other two things, but we very rarely think about the most important thing. Survival.
It's granted.
So it's granted.
Because, again, from the moment you're a baby to when you die, like, we're doing it instinct. It's just there. It's just there. No one tells a baby, listen, this is how you're going to breathe. But you're going to tell your teenager how to make a sandwich, right?
Yes, absolutely.
So
if we could, and this is where hopefully this book and the work goes, if we can tell the teenager how to breathe, then things are a lot different. So we can tell them how to make the sandwich, but we can also tell them how to breathe in a way that they can deal with stress and anxiety of growing up. Like our house, we have one teenager and 3 nearly teenagers, you know, so breathing is a big part of what we're doing now to kind of help them. Beforehand, they were younger, and when they're younger, you're not really as self-conscious, so your breathing just flows and everything's easier. But as we become more aware of our circumstances, our awareness of our breath starts to disappear a little bit. So we have to relearn how to breathe. And for them, or for any teens or children, learning how to be able to change how you feel yourself is hugely valuable.
Yeah. And with your teens, right? Don't go into too much detail, but what significant difference have you seen, like, in?
Oh, it's incredible. So we have one particular who worries an awful lot.
Okay.
And that would manifest physically. She would worry so much that, like, she'd have outbreaks on her skin, you know, inflammation in her hands, you know. And so with her, and she's young now, she's the youngest of them all. When we do our breathing exercises, last thing at night, when everyone's tired, everyone's in bed, and this is coming out, actually, I'm putting them together, like there's going to be a blissful breathing for children and teens, not a book, but recordings that they can listen to.
Yeah.
And so when we listen to the recording last thing at night, and it doesn't matter how they do the breathing, they're just breathing, you know. The next day they wake up and everything's fine. The days when we're doing the breathing, the inflammation disappears, the marks, you know, the scratching stops. And so it is incredible how much it helps. With children and teens, what I've found is they don't need that much of it. You know, their bodies are already open and they're young, and they're, you know, they're not as closed in their thinking sometimes as adults. So a little bit goes a long way. While adults, sometimes we need a bit more because we need to be convinced. The children are just like, oh, this feels great. Oh, done. Yeah. And off they go, and they feel good then afterwards. That's it. You know, they don't really need as much. They just adapt really quickly. They're flexible, you know, in all types of ways. So, so it can really, really help people, because for the big people, we know it can help them in all types of ways to deal with adult life. But oftentimes I think teenage life is a little bit more difficult because you don't have the full picture yet.
No. You
have all these terrible pressures and worries, and your body's, you know, changing, but you don't really know yet that it'll be okay. You know?
It's always the end of the world.
Yeah. So I think for teens particularly, having that superpower to be able to change how they feel when they need it is important.
Yeah, for sure. Now we're going to bring it to Mr. Wim Hof himself.
Yes, of course.
You have the pleasure of calling him Wim.
Yeah.
That's what I noticed when doing your research. You call him Wim. And I'm like, what the fuck, man? He's obviously had a massive influence on your life.
Yeah.
And so many people. What is Mr. Wim Hof like?
Wim is an amazing character. He is so open and so loving and just refreshingly himself.
Yeah.
You know, as people become more aware of say, a person who becomes famous, I can see why famous people would put up barriers to kind of keep their privacy and, you know, protect themselves. Wim is just so open. You know, he's just himself, and it's so refreshing to meet somebody like that. And he's very relaxed and he's very caring. But when you see that ferocious kind of focus coming, you know, when it's time for us to bring, luckily I've had the honor of teaching alongside Wim, when it's time for us to bring 100 people up a snowy mountain and everyone's just wearing shorts, he can call on this incredible focus, you know, that helps lead everybody up the mountain. And you can nearly feel it pulsing from him, you know, it's so strong. And it's a real glimpse into how he could do things like climb up Mount Everest in a pair of shorts by himself. You know, you need that amazing focus. But the good news is we can all get to a point where we can do incredible things. Wim is an ordinary person in lots of ways, but he has shown us that ordinary people can do extraordinary things when we start to bring our attention to our breath and bring our attention to our breath in the cold.
Yeah, it's a slow transition, right?
It is a transition. I think when Wim or other people do incredible things like being encased in ice for hours, or, you know, things that seem extreme and so far beyond us, you know, we can dismiss them. But to get to that point, it's small. It's a 10 seconds of cold at the end of your hot shower. And then it's maybe 20 seconds a couple of weeks after, you know, and then it's maybe, oh, I'm going to walk to the shops without my jacket on, you know, and it's these small things of allowing the body to do what it's built to do. And then we're capable of extraordinary things.
I see. Interesting. And when you first started out on this journey, were you ever intimidated by the extraordinary things that the likes of Wim Hof and the likes of other instructors were doing?
Well, when I first started, our 4 children were very young. They were all under 4. So we had 4 children under 4. And our life was just consumed by changing nappies and making bottles and knife feeds. And, you know, and we were very blessed to have 4 children, but it was tough going. And I was exhausted and tired, and Josie, my wife, was the same. And we had some tragedies in the family. We had 2 or 3 really people we loved die on us, and we were really struggling. And when I heard Wim talking, Wim was talking about these like amazing things that he had done, but they were very far removed from us where we were. Yeah. But when we started, and we started to do a little bit of breathing every day, and we felt the change, we felt the patience.
So you started with his videos or his book?
His videos a long time ago.
Like a wave.
And you know, once we started to kind of get a sense of the breathing and a sense of how much patience we could get from it, and the changes were started, then what was extraordinary to us was that we could wake up feeling refreshed. You know, we didn't have to run up Mount Everest. We were refreshed, and we were patient with the children. You know, so that was an extraordinary result. So I think if people allow themselves just to take a little bit of time to do some breathing and maybe even try a little cold at the end of their hot shower, they will do extraordinary things. But it might necessarily be running up a mountain in shorts, but it might be being able to handle stress better, or it might be their health improves. And these are extraordinary things, because when we lose them, we definitely feel it, that loss. So to gain them again is extraordinary.
For sure. And what do you think people, so you went from changing nappies and being really stressed to listen to his videos, to then the journey of like becoming a Wim Hof instructor yourself.
Yeah.
There came a point in time then, how many years like between like the first video and becoming a Wim Hof instructor, first of all?
It was quite quick, because back then, there's a lot of stuff about Wim Hof Method now. Yeah. But back then, there wasn't that much around. There was one documentary, I think, the Vice documentary. 2016, maybe.
Okay.
So there wasn't much information about it.
It was starting out, yeah.
Yeah, there was an old 10-week course, not the new one, the old one. And we just wanted to learn everything about it. And the only real route to that was to become an instructor. There wasn't that much information about it. And things were very different. I now teach, in a week I'm going to teach in the academy, Wim Hof Academy, teaching the instructors. But there was nothing like that when I started, you know, so it was very much beginning. And so I think I did the instructor course. It takes about 12 months, you know, so I kind of did that straight away after we finished the 10 weeks. And that was it, really. I kind of just, like I was saying at the beginning, the office job started to kind of disappear, and the breathing and the cold gave me so much strength and gave me so much, focus. Yeah. That would, you
just dived into it then, once you saw the benefits of it.
Absolutely.
Makes sense. So let's say 2017, you're a Wim Hof instructor, and you're bringing this, not even a skill set, but this art nearly to Ireland. What was that like for you?
It was great. I shared a room in Poland with other instructors when we were training. The last bit of the training was in Poland. So we finished our final piece there, and there was 2 other Irish lads in the room, Scott and John. And we were the first instructors then in Ireland, and that was really kind of exciting to be at the beginning of it. And there had been enough interest. I remember getting home, we had to wait for the license to see that we pass, and it was kind of December time. And I put my first workshop, got the license, put my first workshop up in January, and it sold out nearly immediately because
Wow.
people were looking for it, and
Yeah.
there was nothing there. So that was a great start, and since then it's just taken off.
Yeah.
People can see the benefits of breathing, of moving, of cold, of yoga, people can see all those benefits now, and they're looking for it.
And when they come to you, obviously, I'm guessing at the start it was a lot of curiosity around this. Not fuss. Fuss is nearly a bad word. But the hype behind the breath.
Of course, yeah.
Versus now, you're kind of competing, obviously, with the rest of the internet. But there's obviously nothing that will beat it, like happening or attending a workshop in real life, right? But whenever someone steps into your workshop, what is the common thing, besides breathing, that they struggle with the most? Is it anxiety and stress?
It's definitely anxiety, stress is one of the big ones.
Yeah.
Autoimmune disease and inflammation is another big one. Some people come because they just don't know how to get themselves out of a problem. Yeah. Some people are just curious.
Yeah.
And some people, it's hilarious, have been bought a ticket by somebody else because that other person, their wife or their husband, thinks, they need to do something, so they send them to the workshop. But it is a very varied number of reasons why people come. Every type of person, every age, every shape, every color. I think people find it for different reasons. They might have a problem, and they might search for that on the internet, and research that is specific, say, to breathing and the cold might come up for it.
Yeah.
And they make the connection, and they're coming to kind of see does it help. So that happens a lot as well. There's a lot of people come for very specific stuff as well.
What you talk about the most is obviously Breathe with Níall.
Yeah.
But then it's cold therapy. So it's ice baths and cold showers.
Yeah.
Now, basically, like in the few podcasts that I've recorded, right? The concept of gratitude keeps popping up. We technically should be grateful for whatever we have. And sometimes it's like, oh, wow, we have running water.
Yeah.
We have hot water, if we're lucky enough as well. So cold therapy, we're talking about sea swims. If it's safe, or if it's not, if there's the sea nearby. If not, you can do ice baths. If not, you can do cold showers. If you don't have hot water, technically you have cold water. Yet people don't want to do a cold shower whatsoever. What is restricting people from diving into cold therapy?
That's a great question. I think we have to open up the cold a little bit wider to understand it. So I like to look at the cold beyond, say, an ice bath or the sea or anything, and look at it as this force that's in our lives all the time anyway. Especially live in Ireland, you can't escape it.
No,
and not all countries.
Live here,
yeah, it is. Not all countries are like that, but even in some really hot countries, it's cold at night. Not all of them, but some of them. So I think our resistance to jumping in the shower goes back to this resistance to the cold. They don't see the cold as something good in their lives. How many people in Ireland have walked out and said, oh, it's a shocking day today, it's cold. It's like a normal topic of conversation to describe the day as horrific or shocking, if it's cold or windy. So, and I think that, when I've been training in extreme cold, say in Poland or Holland and places like that, what I came to the realization was that when you live in the extreme cold, you have to have a way of going out and facing the cold to make you stronger so you can deal with it. Now, you don't have to be in the cold all the time, but nearly all the really cold countries have some culture of getting into the cold, getting into a sauna, and kind of building up their strength because they have these incredibly dark, cold winters every year. And I think we just lack a little bit of that culture here because we don't have that extreme cold. So we kind of have this luxury of not having to face the extreme cold. So we don't have a culture of how to do it. So we do feel it because the cold here gets so damp, but we don't have any of the kind of experience in how to deal with it. So we really hate it, especially in this part of the world. So I think that is built into us from a young age. But what I'm trying to kind of convince people of is the cold can be a force for good in our lives if we know how to use it. The cold can teach us how to deal with stress and anxiety. It can improve our immune system. It can balance our hormones. It can improve our circulation. It can do so many great things for us. We just have to know how to use it. And for the person who doesn't have a shower, doesn't have an ice bath, doesn't live near the sea, they live somewhere in the middle of Ireland or in the middle of somewhere else and they're surrounded by concrete or whatever it is, even taking your shoes and socks off and putting your feet on cold concrete stimulates all those nerve endings in your feet, improves your immune system, does amazing things for us. So our relationship with the cold has to be a respectful one. The cold, as we said before, this can be a very powerful force, but I think we can look at it as something that we can use for good in our lives, and that helps us kind of get through the resistance. Because I get loads of people saying to me, "Oh, I hate the cold, I can't," and that's fine. Not everyone likes the cold, but we have to learn to use it. If you don't get used to the cold comes and gets you. So you kind of have to, like in those extreme countries, find a way of dealing with it.
And how can you use the cold?
So the cold can be used in very small doses every day to dramatically improve our immune system and dramatically reduce stress and improve our energy. So for most people, they might have a hot shower most days. So at the end of that hot shower, it's just turning it to cold, even for 10 seconds or 5 seconds or 2 seconds, and feeling that shock and chaos of the cold on our skin.
So you're saying like freezing, like all the way to the other side? All the way to the other side.
If they can, if they want, always gently with the cold and always respectfully. And if they can't, they go down slowly with the temperature. But when you feel that shock and that cold, our breathing is erratic because we're erratic. So by bringing our attention back to our breath and focusing on our breath, using the breath in the blissful breath, that long exhale, when we can do that, we can actually find a sense of calm and control in that chaos. And not only does it improve our biological health, but then we've faced this fear. We go around for the rest of the day and we've won. We've already won. We've faced down the cold in the morning. We've already, no matter what happens, we've already won. And it also teaches us that when other types of pressure that we mentioned earlier come at us, we then know how to breathe in them as well. We focus on the breath in the same way. So really, from my perspective, the cold is a breathing exercise. Dealing with the cold is actually teaching us how to breathe. And we use the breath to deal with the cold.
I see. That's interesting. That's not fair. Huh? Like you're like I get it. I get it. Now, let's say just cause 10 seconds is a little bit too short, but we're going to try, someone's going to try do maybe 30 seconds or a minute. What breathing technique do you recommend? Obviously, you've got a lot of exercises in here. But
so in the cold, like we said before, the example you had of when we're under pressure, we hold our breath. So instinctively, we'll always breathe in. But it's trying to, the first thing we do in the cold is we try to find the breath, because it will be all over the place. People, like, I've seen it in the ice bath. I've seen it probably 100,000 times, like pure panic. So the first part is becoming aware of the breath. And you'll notice it's all over the place. And then slowly trying to exhale. At the beginning, it'd be like this. And then you'll get this 5th or 6th long exhale. Bing. Vagus nerve begins to activate in the back of the mind. Drops the heart rate. Body starts to feel calm. Body starts to feel safe. It's like it's a switch in the body, in the nervous system. And we can activate that by these long, slow breaths, 5 or 6 of these long, slow breaths. And people will feel a change in their body. They'll feel the body beginning to adapt to it. They'll feel the tension in the body release.
Okay, so that's the point where you found the breath, right?
That's the point where you found the breath. And when the body is calm like that, that's all you need. You don't need a lot of colds. people sometimes think, oh, I need 20 minutes in the cold. We don't need 20 minutes in the cold. You know, just finding that sense of calm with the breath is enough. Once we have that, we're done. You're getting all the great benefits then.
So then just keep inhale, hold, and exhale.
No holding in the cold,
No
just
holding.
breathing all the way out. Just breathing in
And out.
and all the way out. And once you get that calm, then you're in control. Then the body has adapted. Then you're ready. You know, you've done it. You've adapted to the cold, and the body is now feeling safe again. You know, and that's that long exhale. So just breathing in and breathing all the way out. That then is the breath we can take under all types of pressure. So going back to the teens, that's the pressure, that's the breath they can use, just that long exhale to deal with whatever uncertainty they're facing. Or the person in work can use that breath to deal with whatever dickhead they have to work with. You know, whatever pressure that we're feeling, we can use that long exhale to help us find a sense of calm. And that's where the real value is.
Exactly. And when it came to climbing your mountain in shorts and completely shirtless, what was that experience like for you? Just talk me through the entire thing.
It was an incredibly profound experience because you're looking at the top of this huge mountain on the Czech-Polish border, and its head is in the clouds. You know, I've never seen anything like it. Mount Śnieżka. Any Polish people, sorry for mispronouncing that. I always mispronounce it, but it's about 2.5 hours up and about 2.5 hours back. So I went all the way up and all the way back in snow, just in a pair of shorts. The first 10-15 minutes are shocking because you are thinking to yourself, what the hell am I doing here? You know,
what are you feeling in that moment in time?
Well, we feel pure fight or flight. So your heart rate is pounding in your chest. Your fight or flight is accompanied by a narrowing of the mind and anxiety, basically thinking about the worst case scenario.
I'm going to die.
I'm going to die. But that doesn't last very long. Honestly, it's maybe a fleeting moment because we've been there. This is the end of 12 months of training. We know exactly what we're doing. But it's still shocking to the skin, you know, the snow. But you begin to focus on that long exhale. You begin to focus on that breath. Everything else starts to fall away. You start to get a rhythm with the breathing. You become entranced, like in a kind of meditative state. You're fully aware of everything, but you're totally focused on the breath. And your focus moves from the breath, obviously, you know, as things are going by. But as your focus leaves the breath, I could feel the cold coming back in. When we're totally focused, the body is able, it's firstly, it's relaxing, it's adapting, so it's able to deal with the pressure. But when the focus moves away from it, it's not able to deal with the pressure. So about halfway up, no, about 3/4 of the way up Śnieżka, there's a shoulder. The mountain goes like this, and there's a shoulder before the very summit. And I remember standing on the shoulder, looking back down, and it was all snow and it was all icy. And I wiped my head like this, and then I realized that I was actually sweating.
Oh,
you know, there's actually drips of sweat coming off my head. And it was at that moment that I felt a lot of different emotions. Firstly, I couldn't believe that my body was able to generate heat and feel safe and sweat. But on a deeper level, I had to recognize that all of us, you and I and everyone listening, are capable of far more than we think we are. You know, we could look at that mountain and say, no way, never get up in a pair of shorts. But the reality is, with a little bit of training, yes, we could get up that mountain. So part of me had to say, oh no, now I have to go do the things that I might have been kind of limiting myself about, you know.
Yeah.
I had to go do them now because I had no excuse. If I can get up here, I can get up anywhere. And that was a huge kind of thing to come. I kind of left a lot of doubt on the mountain, you know, there at that point.
I can imagine.
And then the summit was so dramatic. Before that, you're kind of sheltered a little bit by surrounding mountains. and the summit is totally exposed. And at the top of it, there are two very squat kind of weather stations. They look like something from Star Wars, but everything's covered in snow. And there's like a chain that guides you up towards them. But it's so cold up there, the icicles are going sideways. The wind is blowing them sideways, you know, but you're totally in the zone. And that last part of the hike up, if my mind went off my breath, I would immediately feel the wind. I'd lose my footing, you know. So it was a real case of bringing it back. And then when I got to the top, Wim Hof is there, and some of the other soon to be instructors were there. And on the wall of the weather station, someone had written in the snow, "Love," you know. And I remember standing there thinking, okay, I've got to the top of the mountain, you know, a real mountain and maybe a metaphorical mountain in my mind. And the answer is love. Someone has written love on the wall, you know. So that can mean a lot of different things to a lot of different people. But for me, it was a point where I felt that I had to be more open and loving, you know, to everybody, to myself, to my family, to friends, to everything. And it was just a huge moment to be standing there going, who wrote that? Yeah. And they probably didn't mean it for me. You know, somebody just wrote it. Or maybe,
no, but this is mine now.
Yeah, or maybe it's there all the time. You know, but it was a huge moment, and really I never felt the same after the mountain. You know, I always wear shorts and t-shirt, and even when it's cold, and you know, people are always saying to me, "Oh my God, do you not feel the cold?" But really, when I came off the mountain, I never really felt the same again. The hypothalamus helps regulate the internal, you know, heat in the body and temperature in the body, and maybe that adventure that day made that work properly for me. You know, maybe I hadn't been working properly. So I came down from the mountain, and we were going home the next day, and I said, I'm not going to put on a pair of shorts. So, you know, I didn't feel like it after the mountain, and I never really put on a pair. You know, I stayed in shorts, you know, for the years afterwards. And what you wear is not important, but it was a reflection of what was going on inside. You know, I was totally changed by the experience. Now, we don't all have to go up the mountain, you know, but we do all have our own mountains, struggles, you know. And what I hope people get from our conversation is that something as simple as breathing can get us up the mountain, you know, can get us through the struggle. They have to go all the way to Poland. You know, the mountain is wherever the struggle is, you know, but the breath can get us up there.
And if they want to start out in pursuing this mountain, obviously with the breath, but what do you recommend a little bit more specifically to that?
Buy the book. And start there. You know, honestly, I think the book is really about getting someone from 0 to 1 or 2.
Okay.
You know, it's like the first couple of steps. And they might read the book and do a little bit of breathing. And like you said, then they might go and do a little bit more breathing. And then they might think, okay, now I'm ready for a little bit of cold at the end of my hot shower. Now I'm ready for one of Níall's workshops with the breathing and the ice bath, you know.
It's within you.
It's within, you know, and no pressure, no forcing, no pushing at all, you know. It's always taking at a pace that suits us. Some people might be like, right, I'm going straight and jumping into the sea. That mightn't be for everybody. In fact, it's not for everybody. But it's just being brave enough to take that first little step. The first little step is always the most difficult. It's like the first step up that actual mountain is the most difficult. And once you get going, then you'll find a rhythm. Yeah.
And you walked into a pub with a cup of chamomile or cacao?
Chamomile from downstairs.
What's you mentioned chamomility?
Yeah.
And I went to Aldi and I couldn't find chamomile.
No, you mightn't find it there. You might need a health shop to find chamomile.
You should have seen me yesterday. It was very annoying. It was like, you know how it's with the berry and the peppermint?
Yes.
And it's just berry there. And I'm just looking at the back and I see peppermint. I see Roubois. What the fuck is that? They could let go of my chamomile tea. So what are the benefits of chamomile tea?
So along the way, I've learned a lot about how plants help us, you know.
Yeah, you studied it for 10 years?
Yeah. So as part of that, the children were really, really young. And like a lot of babies, they mightn't sleep very well, or their teeth are coming through, or they have, becoming a human can be quite
painful.
Yeah, it can.
It's very painful.
And so chamomile is a beautiful flower. Firstly, it's yellow and white, beautiful, but it falls into the nervine group, which means it soothes the nervous system. So when the babies were really small, I started learning and experimenting a lot with chamomile, so it makes people calm. Chamomile is, it's in the name. Yeah. But it's also great for when we feel less tense. We the pain reduces as well a little bit. When we're tense, we feel it more. So I started drinking it a lot. Josie started drinking it a lot. We used to give little tiny ice cubes of it in the children's bottles to help them. They used to be amazing sleepers, and it was like we used to give this little recipe out for it. You make chamomile, really light chamomile. You put it in ice cube trays, and then you pop it in the child's bottle or their drink, and they drink it. It's kind of bitter, so they're not drinking it by itself, and they sleep amazingly well. So we had parents always asking us for chamomile, but it's a really, again, we spend a lot of time thinking about what we're drinking. We obsess about what we drink, and sometimes it's nice to drink something that's actually helping us, and it's a real great complement to the breathing, because it's just something that keeps us calm. And then, life is a little bit easier when we're calm.
And drinking tea.
Yeah,
drinking tea. You're also learning about cacao. Like I notice you on your Instagram stories and stuff. What's the spiel behind that?
Yeah, cacao's amazing. Again, I suppose it's got my herbalist background. I'm always drawn to plants, and just maybe a year before lockdown, I did this event with Natasha Vavasour, who's a cacao expert, and Níall Ó Murchú, who is doing movement and yoga. She's brilliant as well. So we kind of combined forces, and I took people through a Wim Hof experience where they were breathing and in the ice bath, and then afterwards, Natasha gave them cacao and took them on this kind of very mindful ceremony. So cacao itself is a plant that grows in the really warm parts of the world around the equator. And it is the original chocolate, so anybody listening to this is thinking chocolate, and they might be thinking like a crunchy or something like that. But real chocolate in its purest form is incredibly beneficial for us. It's one of the most nutritionally dense foods in the world. So even if it's just for nutrition, it has some of the highest levels of iron and magnesium and all these kind of great things in it. Now, it's very bitter. It's not like chocolate in the shop. Yeah. But there's way more to it than that. It also has theobromine, which is like a mild stimulant. So it's not like a stimulant that makes us wired, but it kind of just opens our nervous system up a little bit. And it has anandamide in it, which is known as the bliss chemical, which is already present in us, but it helps kind of activate that a little bit. So when people drink cacao in a we can always drink it running down the road, but when we drink it in a ceremony or something that kind of gives it time and attention, it can really help us to relax, but also a sense of kind of opening, because it's a vasodilator, so it actually opens up the blood vessels as well, very mildly. So it's been used in many forms for a long, long time, but this in more recent times is a newer version of how to use it as part of like a meditation or part of breathing. So we had used it as part of the event that we ran, and then COVID kicked in, and we started running events online. But I started drinking it and combining it with the breathing, and what I found was, because it's a vasodilator and it opens everything up, it's the perfect complement to breathing, so drinking the cacao, it makes me feel, immediately my body feels soft, and looser, and I can feel my mind is slows down just a little bit, and emotionally I just feel happy, so then layering in some breathing really works well. But I credit cacao in some of the big decisions we've made over COVID, like the business, like all businesses, the Breathe with Níall business, we had to Josie and I working it together, we had to reimagine it quite a few times over the last few years, and taking time to drink cacao and breathe gave me some of the best ideas I've ever had on how to do that. You know, taking time just to do nothing else except
like it's allowed
experience
you
it.
to grow nearly.
So so we now use it in some of our events. Like we have events, breathing and cacao events coming up, and I just think it's been so beneficial to us. Like for, you know, the way we kind of run our events is that it's not necessarily myself or Josie teaching people. It's more like, look, this is what we do, and we're just sharing how we live with people. You know, so when cacao became such an important part of what we did at home, it was only natural then to say, hey, does anybody want to, you know, experience this too? And there's a legend around cacao that when, you know, the human nature balance is out of balance, cacao kind of comes along and comes out of the dark rainforest around the equator and comes out and kind of helps us, and then comes back in again, you know. So it's really gaining popularity at the moment, you know. So we need it.
It's trendy.
Yeah, so we need it, that's for sure. But I've personally, I found it extraordinarily beneficial.
Everything has its place, its
Yeah,
time.
yeah,
and
absolutely.
I'm sure everyone is going to be like, holy shit, Deb, like this was a good one. Like you brought someone over that like climbed up massive mountain shirtless. And there I am with like 3 layers.
Hey, that's all right. That's fine as well.
Everyone at their own pace. Thank you so much, Níall, for joining me.
You're very welcome.
I appreciate it. And thank you for listening, everyone.
Number Days Collective.